How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and as you can see, we have a very fun surprise for the 2020 Chevy Colorado Z71. So I just received the DK2 or DK2, as you guys might see it online, Avalanche Series Snow Plow. So I ordered this guy off of Costco, and this was actually a really great deal, guys. So it was after a $200 manufacturer rebate, only $1,200 shipped, and that's including like the freight costs of shipping it. And everywhere else where you see these guys, they're usually $1,500, $1,600, but Costco really came through with a good deal. So I'm hoping this guy will prove to be a really great addition to the team. So this guy ended up shipping out of Toledo, Ohio, and I'm in Detroit, so it literally took less than a week to get here. What ended up happening is, since this thing is pretty heavy, it's about 350 pounds and came on a pallet, we had to schedule an appointment for the freight company to come and deliver it to my house, just to make sure that you can sign for it and stuff. So like I said, within a week, I had this thing together and at the house. So really fast time, and it's packaged really well. Really heavy duty cardboard material, and overall, just by looking at it, the package seems fairly undamaged, so it's a good sign. Let's crack right into it and see what we got. And opening it up, you'll see that everything is fairly nicely packaged as well. So I'm gonna have to move the Mazda out of here because I'm probably gonna want to lay all these parts out nice and clean. But first thing we should do, probably check out the manual. So Mazda's out, it's a new day, get a little bit of sunlight going for us. Looks like, what do we got in here? Box of accessories. I think there's another box down here somewhere. Nope, that's just padding, don't need that. Looks like we got frame pieces here, here. Oh, another box down there. And we'll take a look at what that is later. So we'll get these guys laid out and start with step one. I was just about to comment on how well this thing was packaged. I mean, the amount of foam in between all the layers of the pieces of frame was great. I mean, nothing to really make it look like it's scratched. But I get to the first plow blade, and we got a scratch there, and a scratch there. So I'll probably have to call the company on this one, just kind of see what they can do. We'll go from there. Okay, so we got everything laid out. Damage report. So first thing we got, we have this bolt right there that goes into the frame there. We're missing the other one on the other side. This guy was just lying in the bottom of the box, just loose. And I checked around all my packaging materials, the bottom of the box, emptied everything out. That guy was missing. We have the scratches on the plow that we went over on this side of the plow. If we take a look, one of the plates right there, I believe this might even be the bottom of the blade. Giant gouge right there with exposed metal, along with another scratch over there, and then another scratch on the other side of the plow. So I think what I'm going to do is just call the company, see what they can do for me, and just assemble this guy as is right now, just in case there's any other missing hardware. We can easily see where those guys are and include it in the report. So let's get started. Also forgot to mention this assortment of hardware that came with the kit. So I was able to get the winch because the Costco package included it. So in that box we have the winch. In this box with accessories, it's the winch mounting hardware, wire protector, the rubber that is the deflector on the top to prevent snow from flying back at you, as well as this is the controller for the winch. So we'll also get these guys assembled as well, just make sure all the parts are there, and then get started. So guys, step one involves us mounting both sides of the blade together, and you'll notice the middle of the blade is actually where you see this fourth hole right here, just so that way you're aligning the correct sides to mount up everything together. And these bolts are they're metric bolts, and I was kind of tied between using an SAE versus metric wrench on those guys because it's fairly close. But since it's in metric, I'll just assume to use the metric sized wrench that I have, and these three are 17 millimeters. So we'll go ahead, get started, and get these guys assembled. So, important thing to note, guys, when you are reinstalling these, you'll want to go bolt, washer, washer, nut. So, bolt and the washer on one side, washer and nut on this side. Next thing we're going to want to do is attach these parts of the blade down to this bottom part right here. So let's zoom out and get that done. So what you guys are going to want to do is lay your plow, the two sides like you see it here, and arrange your blade pieces as shown right here. So the two smaller pieces of the blade go on either side, and the long piece spans both of them, so that'll go in the middle. And what you guys will notice is that these are carriage bolts with nuts on the back that are holding them on. And what I mean by that is when you do fasten these guys, you'll notice carriage bolts have this kind of square edge underneath the bolt head. You'll want to make sure that that guy is nice and secure in here and won't move. And then you'll just want to tighten the nut on the bottom when installing them. Well guys, things weren't lining up, but you'll see that this giant gap, that's caused by this guy being put on backwards. So let's take it off and flip it over. So let's flip this guy over and give him final tightening. Next, we're going to get our 19mm socket and attach these two bolts to the frame right here and here. And this is what mounts the footrest. Grab a 19mm wrench while you guys are doing this because your hands can't hold them up. So also, don't be dumb like me, guys. Use your impact sockets if you have them. Save the life on your regular chrome ones. And I'm using the impact driver. If you have an impact wrench, like the heavier duty 1/2-inch drive tool, use that, you'll get more torque out of it. My battery on my impact wrench is dead, so we'll just stick with the driver for now while that guy's charging, and we may switch over once that fully charges. So use the proper tools and save the life of your other stuff. So the next thing we're going to do is assemble the D frame that you see right there over onto the A frame over here. And what you guys are going to want to notice is that in order to have these right side up, on the A frame you see this bottom guy, it should be on the right hand side, and on the D frame itself you'll notice these guys over here are kind of swooped up, if that makes any sense. So the bolt holes, you should be trying to put the bolts up through them and swooped up kind of like that when you're looking at it from the top down. So let's go ahead and get this started. So to assemble these two pieces together, the only thing you're going to want to do is take off this lock nut and washer, slide it off, and then you're going to want to insert your D-frame first underneath this tab right here, and then the hole in the D-frame just slides right on top of there, and then just tighten everything back up. And this guy uses a 24mm socket and bolt, and because I don't have a 24mm wrench, just use your adjustable, fit it to size, and tighten it from there. Okay, so this is why you assemble things first before calling the company to report parts missing. So if you see, what you're looking right now at is the mainframe, and you're going to see this locking pin in the mainframe uses a bolt, a couple of washers, and a lock nut. Remember that piece of hardware that we had missing? That's what that guy is. So just got knocked out of place, that's where it goes. So always try to assemble things before calling the manufacturer, just to make sure that you have everything. So what we're going to want to do, next step calls for attaching the mainframe, this guy right here, to our fully assembled A-frame, so A-frame plus D-frame that we did in the last step. And like I just mentioned in that one clip, we see these pins with the bolt and washer system on the other side down there. What we're going to want to do is take our mainframe right here with this bolt, and we're going to want to insert it into our A-frame plus D-frame combo. So the pin is going to go through here, and then you're going to connect your nut and bolt through that guy, locking it in place. So we'll get you on a stand and show you what that looks like. So switching this guy up, once you remove the pins on your mainframe, there's also going to be the safety pin over on the A-frame. What you're going to want to do is, it's through the pin on this side, but open on this side. You're just going to bend it a little bit, pull it out, and take it to the side. And you're going to need to remove this guy before installing your mainframe to the A-frame. So once you have both pins installed on either side, it's then time to install the bolts that lock this guy into place. So you guys will notice that you have your bolt, washer going from the underside, then we're going to have another washer, and then the lock nut on top. You'll have to do a little bit of wiggling to get that guy in. And then it's just a matter of tightening that guy down. And what you're going to want to use is a 13mm socket and wrench on either side, and tighten that guy up. So the next step calls for installing the winch onto the winch mounting plate of the mainframe. And as you guys can see right here, I just took my mainframe and tilted it backwards, so that way it's resting nice and flat on the ground. So I'll get you guys on a stand and show you where exactly you need to bolt up to. So what you guys are going to see are these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bolts on the bottom, or bolt holes at least, and that's where you're going to be mounting your winch up to. As you can see, it's got 6 holes on itself, and that guy's just going to sit right there. And what you're going to want to do to secure this guy is you have more 13mm hardware, and what you're going to do is take the bolt with the washer, have that go through the winch itself, and then from the underside of this plate you're going to insert a lock washer onto the bolt and tighten it with the nylock nut. So overall the sandwich is going to be bolt, washer going through the winch plate, and on the bottom you'll put the lock washer and then the lock nut. So we'll go ahead and do that and get started. So now that we got our winch on, we got to go ahead and take that zip tie off, well, both zip ties off, and then we're going to take that loop and we're going to take that zip tie off and remove the U-bolt that the chain is connected to, and we're going to attach the loop to the U-bolt and bolt it back together on the A-frame. Now what you're going to want to do to access the underside of that U-bolt is go ahead and tip your main frame back so that way the winch mounting plate is resting nicely on the ground. And then you're going to take your A-frame and tilt that back so it's resting on top. Now don't worry, you're not touching the winch or anything. That's still nice and secure. If you can see in the corner of your screen, it's actually resting on the mainframe tabs down there. And we can get our U-bolts off. And you guessed it, 13mm bolts. Or nuts, I should say. So as you guys can see here, I got this guy tipped over again, and we have our strap attached to our U-bolt. Make sure you guys don't tighten it overly tight. The manual does say to have it a little loose, just to have a little bit of slack in the line. And then what you guys will notice when we tip this guy back up is that on the winch itself, our strap goes over this roller piece. So make sure that your strap is going over the roller piece, down to the U-bolt, tighten it, just not overly tight. And then in our next step, we will reattach the safety chain. So this guy right here is a 19mm, and what we're actually going to do is take it from this side and put it over here. So when we actually attach our safety chain, the corresponding hole that we attach our carabiner to is on this side of the A-frame. So I figure might as well have this guy on the proper side so it's not crossing over. Once we got that guy on, we can take our carabiner and clip it down right there. So next step, so what you're viewing right here, this is your blade itself. That's your A-frame. What we're going to be doing is taking 1, 2, 3 of those cotter pins, and we're going to have to drive them through here, here, and there's another spot right there on the plow itself. So what you're going to want to do for these guys is we're going to switch our focus. You're going to want to remove the cotter pin, so you're going to take that guy, bend it with a pair of needle nose pliers, so that way you can pull the pin out and then install it from there. So we'll go ahead and show you an example of what that looks like. So hopefully you guys can see that. I bent it like that, and then the pin will slide out. Oops. That's your cotter pin. You'll take your bolt out, line up this guy with the frame, which is probably out of focus right now, and then attach your cotter pin back through. So we'll show you that in detail as well. So let's go ahead and line this guy up. Give me 1 second. I think I might have a trick for this guy. There we go. So remember that piece of cardboard packaging that I thought was a box when we first opened up the crate, and I kind of threw that aside? Well, don't throw it out because you'll need it here. So what you'll end up doing is taking your A-frame, lifting it up a little bit, and using that block as a prop, and then you'll line up the holes from there. And what you'll do is you'll take your bolt, or your pin, I should say, feed it through there. And on your other side, you want to take your cotter pin right here, install it from the underside, and with your needle nose pliers, grab this one end and bend it over so that way it locks into place. And in the end, after you bend it, you'll have something like this. Not the prettiest thing, but at the end of the day, it stops the bolt from sliding out, as you can see right there. And once you do that 3 times, you'll be all set. You'll have successfully attached your A-frame to your plow blade. So the next step calls for installing the casters on your snow blade. And what you're going to want to do is take this nut and bolt
and you're going to want to attach it to the side of the plow. It doesn't tell you which hole to thread the bolt through, but I'm just going to go with the middle one just to be safe, and we can adjust it from there. And the important thing to note, guys, is when you're installing it, you want your caster wheel to be on the inside of the plow. So when we attach it like this, the caster will be on the inside and it won't be on the outside. So when you're plowing, you won't have to worry about that guy getting stuck. So important thing to note about the caster, you're going to want to make sure that this 19mm bolt is not tightened down too tight, so that way you have enough room to make sure that this guy swings nice and freely. And then we do want to keep it in the middle because when we're in our stored position, you'll just want to insert that guy like that. Well, actually this is in the in-use position, that way the caster's out of the way while you're plowing. Our stored position would be all the way down at this bottom, so that way you can roll this guy around in your garage. Okay, so this part's a little tricky, so I'll show you guys on the opposite side, but essentially what we're doing right here is attaching the flip spring to the body of the plow, and essentially this guy just acts like if you hit something while you're plowing, your truck doesn't just take the momentum, like the plow will actually tip forward and prevent damage to like your actual truck. So what you guys are going to end up doing is taking this spring, hooking it into the top of the plow, and then hooking it through this eye bolt, and then you're attaching that through the frame itself. And what you guys see right here is that we have two nuts that are kind of sandwiching this guy to the A-frame itself. So what you guys are going to want to do is, per the instructions, you're going to tighten this guy down so that way the spring just is in enough compression, or sorry, not compression, tension, I should say, just so it's in enough tension to be nice and tight and won't move. And then you're going to back it out slightly just to give the spring a little bit of slack. So let's go ahead and show you guys what that looks like. Okay, so what you guys are want to do, take your spring right here. It's symmetrical, so don't worry which side you connect, but you'll take one end and then hook it into the top of the plow up here. And then you're going to take your eye bolt right here, take off the nylock nut down here and one of the washers, and you're going to take this assembly, hook it around the spring, give it a quick second, and attach it through here. Then put your washer back on, put your bolt back on, and now is when you're going to want to start tightening. So what I recommend doing is keeping this nut up here for placement all the way up just as high as you can, because as you start tightening down, this will want to start coming down and going into tension. And what you're going to want to do, take your impact with a 19mm deep socket, and you're going to want to sit it on this end right here and start tightening to pull it into tension. And then once you get that guy just tight enough, you want to take your 19mm wrench and hold that guy on here and tighten it so that way it's sandwiched on this plate right there. So we'll go ahead and get started by tightening the bottom bolt with our impact and 19mm deep socket just to get that spring in enough tension. So once we got the spring in enough tension, just so that way it's nice and tight, we'll back it out a little bit. And what you can do is look at the other side as a reference. So I just used my finger and just kind of measured how many threads were sticking up from the bottom of this plate and just made sure they were even. And then what you're going to want to do is take this top nut, lower it down, and then you're going to sandwich these guys onto this piece of the A-frame. So next what we're going to want to do is take our handle that we use to angle the blade, and we're going to attach it to these 2 points right here and right here. So what you're going to want to do is undo these are 13mm bolts and nuts, and what you're going to want to see is this part where the handle is welded to this bracket. This is going to want to be on your left hand side, and this upper bolt goes in here and this lower bolt goes in here. So just install it like that. You might have to twist this guy around a little bit and install it like that. Tighten up your bolts and you're good to go. So the next step involves us attaching our rubber snow deflector on top of the plow blade. And what you're going to want to do is, I like to lay things out just so that I know how things are going to go in. What you're going to see is that you're going to sandwich this material right here, that rubber strip. You're going to put that on first, and then you have these pieces of like metal bars that kind of clamp this guy down. Now what you're going to notice is that there's a piece with 2 bolts in the middle. There's 3 pieces of these like clamping mechanisms. The one with the 2 bolts in the middle that you see right there goes in the middle, and then your 2 other pieces obviously go on the outside. Now what you're going to want to note is that the kit comes with these deflectors, so you know where the edges of your plow are. You're going to see that in each of these clamp guys, there's going to be one side that doesn't have a bolt, carriage bolt through it. So that guy's got a carriage bolt through it, this guy doesn't. You're going to want to have these guys out at the end when you place it down, because you're going to use this nut to lock down. So I got the plow up on its wheels. The next thing I'm going to want to do is take this back support stand. We're going to undo the pin that's in there and just slide it into that guy. So here we are outside right by the truck, and we have this one last frame piece. What I'm going to want to do is take this guy, put it in my 2-inch front receiver hitch, and that pin that we had taken out earlier, that's going to serve as the locking pin for this mounting piece. And once connected, it's going to look something like that. And so I just took the plow, wheeled it up to that piece that we connected, and what you guys are going to see is that we have these 2 tabs right here. There's another one there I already have locked in. What you're going to want to do is take this shiny metal piece right here. You're going to slide that onto this tab right here, and then you'll notice that there's a cotter pin that you're going to stick through this shiny metal bracket, and that's what locks it into place. And if you guys are lucky enough like me and your cross rail is exposed on your front 2-inch receiver hitch, you can install these guys. Essentially it's just 1 bolt through your plow frame, and then it's just a threaded rod that you can adjust the length to make sure that you get an extra piece of bracing while you're plowing the snow. So I'm going to put one on the driver's side and then one on the passenger side over there. Don't worry if your guys' truck doesn't have an exposed cross frame piece. What you'll end up doing is just using the front 2-inch receiver hitch, and the manufacturer says that's fine. So connecting up the winch, you'll notice on your guys' wiring harness you'll have this piece right here with these 2 ends that are covered. There's going to be a tag on them that say to motor, red for positive, black for negative, and you're going to connect those guys to the winch right there and there. And what I recommend for tidiness is to go through the hole in the frame right here, just so that way all of your wires are nice and concealed to one another. So get the positive through, then we'll insert the negative and get them attached. So there's negative, and you'll see there's a negative sign right here. I know I have to zoom in on it, and positive sign right there. Connect black to your negative, red to your positive, and what you guys have here is just an eyelet. Just undo this nut, take off one of the brass washers, you have 2 of them right here, insert your eyelet onto your stud, put the other brass washer back on, and then insert your nut. And you're going to want to do this both for the positive and the negative sides. So I'll go ahead and get started on this and come back to you when we reach the next step. So here in the garage, we're about ready to set up the winch itself, and the wiring is very straightforward. What won't be straightforward is where we're going to end up packaging this guy. So what you guys will notice right here, this is your power distribution pack, and it's got the connector for the controller right there. So 2 sets of wires head on out to the winch itself to provide power, and the other 2 wires, one goes to the negative terminal of the battery, the other goes to the positive terminal. And the thing to note with this guy is that you can connect a 35 amp breaker that comes with the kit and install that in line with your power, just so that way you're being a little bit safer with the 12 volts that you're supplying to this power pack. And then you'll notice this is the wireless remote receiver box. So this guy just has a standard plug connector which plugs into our power port right there, and then there's a negative lead that you'll want to take and connect to the negative terminal of your battery. So as you guys can see, tried to get this guy looking somewhat presentable. This is essentially the power block and the remote transceiver zip tied together, trying to get it into a nice convenient package, as well as the remote for the wireless guy being plugged into the top here. Get some of the wires kind of zip tied together and everything somewhat in the place that it needs to go. And I found that in order to place this guy, what you're going to want to do is take this and place it right next to the washer hose bottle, and you'll see that it slots in nicely and has a little bit of space, so that way you still have everything that you need. In order to begin the process, we're going to need to disconnect our battery, and you'll first want to take off your negative end of the battery, and that's just a 10mm nut right here. And then if we lift this cover up, we'll see our positive terminal. Take this guy off second, and again that's another 10mm nut as well. So quick tip that I just learned when removing the positive terminal on your battery is that you need to actually remove the battery cable itself. So you'll see this guy right here. This side goes on the battery post itself with this 10mm nut. This guy actually doesn't come off the bolt itself, so that's why you have to go to this fuse panel, and this is just a 13mm nut holding this guy onto the post right there on the fuse panel. So what you're going to want to do is just take this guy off, and what you're going to end up doing is when you're tying in your power for the winch itself, you're going to want to tie it to this guy and the 13mm nut that goes on the stud right here. So once you get that connected, then you can go ahead and reconnect your battery connector right there on this terminal itself. And of course, because we are tying into that larger post on the battery, I had to cut off the eyelet on this guy because the diameter is too small. And what you guys will notice is that this connector is for, I don't know if you can see it on there, 12 to 10 gauge wire. So I just went over to Menards, picked up a pack of eyelets that are larger in diameter right there, that'll hopefully fit on our stud. So we'll go ahead, take one of these guys out, strip this wire back, and then crimp on one of these new guys so that way we can tie into the larger post on the battery. So let's go ahead and get this guy taken care of. So what you want to do is take your eyelet, line it up just so that way you can see a little bit of the wire that would be sticking past the area where you're crimping down. So we'll note right there, take our wire strippers, and then go from there. Give this guy a little twist, and pull. There we go. Now that we got our wires exposed, go ahead and give them a nice twist, that way they stay nice and tight together. And you'll want to take your eyelet, slide the wires through there, and you'll notice just a little bit sticking out right there. That's perfectly fine. That's what our goal is, that way we maintain contact with this guy. And then you'll take your crimping edge and go ahead and crimp that guy down. Then you'll notice you got a nice solid connection right there. So let's get this on the truck. So as you guys can see, this is how we have it wired in. We have our positive coming around, and as you guys can note on that larger 13mm nut that we have, I put the ring terminal for the winch itself on top. That way the factory wire connector is sitting nice and firm on the bottom there. And then for our negative side of things, we just have those guys on that other 10mm bolt on the negative terminal. So we'll go ahead, we'll get the cover put back on this guy, take her outside and see if the winch works. And with that, we got the truck on, power to the winch, and if we go in, that should raise. Kind of loud, but not too bad. Out should lower it. So the last thing you're going to want to do, the last adjustment that needs to be made, are on these skid shoes that you see right here on the bottom. And what you're going to want to do is take an open-ended wrench on the bottom and a 27mm socket up top, and you'll lower your plow so that way it's either touching the ground or maybe just a couple millimeters off the ground, just to set your plow height. And from there you will go ahead and tighten these nuts so that way they sandwich on that metal plate right there. And after that adjustment's made, you should be all set and ready to plow. Okay, so now that everything's nice and adjusted, the real last part, we'll be taking this cable loom protector and wrapping it around the wires just to keep them a little bit more weatherproof. Well, we are running out of light, but that looks a heck of a lot better, keeping the wires just a little bit more protected when the snow and ice start to rain on it. So with that, I think our install is pretty much complete. Now it's just a matter of time putting this guy away until the snow starts falling. So, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this video helped you with your install of your DK2 Avalanche Snow Plow, or if you were considering getting a light duty plow for your small truck, hopefully this helped inform you. I'll be doing a review once the snow starts flying, so stay tuned for that one. And until the next time, we'll catch you guys later. Hey guys, coming to you after the fact of the video, a couple of quick notes that I wanted to mention. One is that this setup is really great for easy removal when it's not snowing outside. So obviously while getting this guy up and running, I wanted everything connected, but since we're still maybe hopefully a couple months out from actually getting any reasonable snow, we can go ahead and take this guy out and prolong the life of our electrical components. Another thing to note is while the shipment came slightly damaged with the plow, I will note that they do make one strong controller, so I had actually left this guy outside, and because it was getting dark, I didn't clean up all of my materials, and when I pulled my car in, I heard a nice loud crunch, and thought, oh great, now I really did it. But this guy surprisingly still works, so when we power it on, still got power. Bring it in a little bit, bring it out, and that's good. And one last thing that I'll note is that we are, I don't know if you guys can see it, but very close to hitting the front of the bumper. And this gives me just enough space to park inside the garage. Like really, really close to not making it in there. So I think in our next video, we'll get a system set up to easily allow us to park without worrying about crashing our front bumper. So stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next one.